The coffee mug in my hand had gone cold when Bradley called with that familiar, grave tone of his. Mom, Ryan has found a buyer for the house at $350,000, a fantastic opportunity. Don't worry, Jen's basement is quite comfortable for someone your age. I looked down at the world's best grandma mug Ashley had given me years ago, thinking about the secret folder Tom had left in his drawer, the villa in Spain, investment accounts, and the $50,000 independence fund that none of my children knew about. 3 weeks from now, I'd be watching the Mediterranean sunset from a terrace, sipping Spanish wine, remembering the look on Bradley's face when those boxes of childhood memorabilia arrived at his doorstep. But that day hadn't come yet. Today, I was still Eleanor Patterson, 63-year-old widow, supposedly helpless and financially struggling. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. What would you do if your children treated you like an asset to be liquidated after your spouse passed away? The house felt different without Tom. For 35 years, his presence had filled these rooms, his laughter in the kitchen, his reading glasses forgotten on every surface, the sound of his workshop tools in the garage. Now there was only silence and the occasional visit from Martha, my 70-year-old neighbor who brought casseroles and companionship when everyone else had moved on with their lives after the funeral. "Have the kids called today?" Martha asked, setting down a dish of something that smelled like rosemary and comfort. "Bradley did," I said, still staring at the phone in my hand. "About the house," Martha's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd known Tom since before I met him, a friendship that spanned back to college days. "What about the house?" "They want me to sell it. Bradley's found a buyer." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Apparently, Jen's basement is the perfect place for someone my age." Martha sat down across from me, her weathered hands folded neatly on the kitchen table. "And what does Eleanor want?" What did I want? Nobody had asked me that question since Tom's heart attack 2 months ago. Bradley arrived the next morning in his serious Navy suit, the one he wore for important business meetings. He looked so much like his father that sometimes it hurt to look at him. The same thoughtful furrow between his brows, the same determined set to his jaw. But where Tom's eyes held warmth, Bradley's carried a restless anxiety I'd watched grow since childhood. "Mom," he began, setting his briefcase on the coffee table, "we need to talk about your situation." "My situation?" I gestured around the living room. "You mean my home?" Bradley sighed, running his hand through his thinning hair, another gesture inherited from his father. "The property taxes alone must be eating through Dad's pension, and the maintenance was for a house this size. Your father paid off the mortgage 15 years ago," I said quietly. "The property taxes are manageable." Bradley blinked, momentarily thrown off script. "Still, it's too much house for one person." "Megan and I have been talking." "How is Megan?" I interrupted, suddenly curious about my daughter-in-law who hadn't visited once since the funeral. Bradley's expression flickered with something I couldn't quite read. "She's fine, busy with work and the kids." "And the restaurant?" I asked gently. His shoulders tensed. The restaurant had been Bradley's dream, an upscale bistro that had lasted precisely 8 months before closing. Tom had refused to invest, telling Bradley that first-time restaurants rarely succeeded. Bradley had found other investors and lost their money instead. "That's not relevant, Mom." His voice hardened. "What's relevant is that we've found a solution that works for everyone. Ryan Mitchell, Megan's cousin, has a client ready to make a cash offer on the house. With that money, you could help with Ashley's college fund, and Megan and I could finally get that house on Maple Street." I studied my son's face, seeing for the first time the desperation hiding behind his businesslike demeanor. Bradley had always been like this, even as a child. He'd approach me with proposals rather than requests. When he wanted a new bike, he'd present a slideshow about transportation efficiency. When he wanted to extend his curfew, he'd create a chart of teenage independence milestones. "Where would I live?" "Bradley," I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Jen's getting the basement renovated. Private entrance, small kitchenette. You'd have your independence, but family would be right upstairs if you needed anything." He leaned forward, voice softening. "Mom, you can't stay here alone. What if something happened? What if you fell and no one was there to help? The concern would have been touching if it hadn't arrived packaged with a real estate deal. When did you and Jen discuss this? I asked, remembering that my daughter hadn't called me in weeks. Bradley glanced at his watch. We had dinner last Friday. The whole family, even Mark, was there. We're all concerned. Mom, everyone except me, I said. Since I wasn't invited to this family dinner about my future, Bradley had the grace to look embarrassed. We didn't want to upset you. Grief can cloud judgment, and a movement at the window caught my eye. Martha was in my garden, pretending to check on the rose bushes Tom and I had planted together. But I knew better. She was keeping an eye on me, just as she had been since the funeral. I'll think about it, I said, standing up to signal the end of our conversation. Bradley looked relieved. That's great. Mom, Ryan needs an answer by next week. The buyer is very motivated. After he left, Martha knocked on the back door, a concerned expression on her face. I wasn't eavesdropping, she said immediately, but that boy of yours nearly knocked me over rushing to his car. Didn't even stop to say hello. I smiled despite myself. Bradley's always in a hurry. Martha settled into Tom's chair at the kitchen table, a liberty only she was allowed. Want to tell me what that was about? So I told her everything: the house sale, Jen's basement, the family dinner I hadn't been invited to. Martha listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. Eleanor, she said finally, have you checked Tom's papers thoroughly? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Martha leaned forward. Tom Patterson was many things, but careless wasn't one of them. He wouldn't have left you vulnerable. That night, after Martha left, I went to Tom's study, a room I'd avoided since his death. His presence was strongest here, the leather chair still shaped to his body, the reading glasses on the desk, the half-completed crossword puzzle. I sat in his chair and began methodically going through the drawers. In the bottom right drawer, beneath a stack of old tax returns, I found a folder I hadn't seen before. Inside were bank statements showing accounts I didn't recognize, investment portfolios diversified across markets, and most surprisingly, deed papers for a property in Marbella, Spain. Attached to the deed was a photograph of a whitewashed villa with blue shutters and bougainvillea climbing the walls. On the back, Tom had written, "For Eleanor's new beginning, 2023. My hands trembled as I continued through the folder. There were instructions for accessing a safe deposit box at First National Bank, details of a revocable living trust with my name as sole beneficiary, and a sealed envelope addressed to me in Tom's handwriting with instructions not to open until 1 month after his death. One document caught my attention, a patent assignment form. I knew Tom had worked as an engineer for Westfield Technologies for 30 years, but I'd always thought of him as an employee. The document showed that Tom had been co-inventor of a semiconductor component now used in devices worldwide. The royalties alone generated over $200,000 annually. My practical, modest husband had been quietly wealthy all these years, and he had never told our children. I found his journal in the desk's hidden compartment, the one he thought I didn't know about. An entry from 5 years ago jumped out at me. Bradley asked for investment in his restaurant concept today. Had to say no. He thinks I'm being overcautious, but I've watched money change too many people. I want my children to love values, not assets. Eleanor understands this, even if the kids never will. Sometimes love means saying no. The phone rang, startling me from my thoughts. It was Ashley, my granddaughter, calling unexpectedly. "Grandma, are you okay?" Her voice sounded different from her usual rushed calls, more present, concerned. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How's college?" It's okay." She hesitated. "Grandma, I need to ask you something. Have you been sending me money every month? $500 deposits?" My heart sank. I'd been making those deposits directly to her account since she started college. With Jen's knowledge, but at her request to not make a big deal of it, to Ashley. "Yes," I admitted. "I wanted to help with your expenses." "Mom never told me," Ashley said, her voice tight with emotion. She let me think it was coming from her and Dad. I only found out because I saw a bank statement with your name on it. Your mother thought it was better that way, I said carefully. Better for who? Ashley's voice cracked. Grandma, I've been feeling so guilty. I stopped calling as much because Mom said you were fragile after Grandpa died and needed space. But you've been supporting me this whole time. I closed my eyes, Tom's desk chair creaking as I leaned back. Ashley, you have nothing to feel guilty about. Yes, I do. I let them convince me you were just this sad old lady who needed taking care of. Meanwhile, you were helping pay my tuition. She took a deep breath. And now I overheard them talking about selling your house. I sat up straighter. What did you hear exactly? Dad was on the phone with someone named Ryan. He said they needed to move quickly before Mom changes her mind. Ashley's voice lowered. Grandma, they're treating you like you don't matter. From the mouths of babes, or in this case, a 20-year-old art student who saw more clearly than her parents. There's something else, Ashley continued. I never told you, but I've been taking art classes. Mom and Dad think I'm studying business economics, but I switched my major last semester. Art, I smiled, remembering the little girl who used to spend hours with my watercolors. You always had talent. I wanted to tell you, but Mom said it would upset you and Grandpa because art isn't practical. She paused. That wasn't true either. Was it? No, Ashley, your grandfather and I would have been thrilled. After we hung up, I sat in Tom's study until dawn, reading through his papers and journal entries. The more I discovered, the clearer the picture became. Tom had been preparing not just for his death, but for what would come after. He had anticipated our children's reactions with an accuracy that would have been amusing if it weren't so heartbreaking. My phone chimed with a text from Jen. Mom, Bradley told me about the house talk. I know change is hard, but the basement renovation will be beautiful. I've attached some inspiration pics. Mark and I are so excited to have you closer. Ashley is too. The attached images showed a glossy, magazine-perfect basement apartment. I recognized the photos immediately. They were from a home design website, not pictures of Jen's actual basement, which I had seen during Christmas and distinctly remembered as a cluttered storage space with a persistent mildew problem. Out of curiosity, I opened Instagram and searched for Jen's account. My daughter was an avid social media user, documenting her perfect family life for her followers. Her latest post showed her standing in an empty room with paint swatches, getting ready for a special family member to move in. 3 generations. One roof had Best Daughter Award. The post had hundreds of likes and comments praising Jen's selflessness. The reality versus the performance was jarring. I had always known Jen curated her online presence carefully, but seeing her use my situation for social validation made something shift inside me. I closed the browser and returned to Tom's papers, finding a business card for Barbara Goldstein, estate attorney. According to the appointment calendar in Tom's desk, he had met with her multiple times in the year before his death. It was time I had a conversation with Ms. Goldstein. Barbara Goldstein's office smelled of leather and lemon polish. The attorney herself was a sharp-eyed woman in her 60s with an impeccable gray suit and a directness I appreciated immediately. Mrs. Patterson, she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought. I was wondering when you'd contact me. Tom was very specific that I should wait for you to reach out rather than approaching you directly. Why, I asked. Barbara smiled slightly. Your husband said you needed time to see certain truths for yourself. She spread several documents across her mahogany desk. Tom created a rather sophisticated estate plan. The revocable living trust gives you complete control over all assets. Your children were named as beneficiaries of the life insurance policies, only quite generous ones. I might add, everything else, the house, investments, intellectual property rights, and the Spanish property belongs solely to you. I nodded, having discovered as much from my research. Why didn't Tom tell me about all this, about the patent royalties, the investments? He said you preferred simplicity. That you were content with what you believed was a comfortable but modest lifestyle. Barbara tilted her head. Was he wrong? I thought about it. Tom and I had lived well, but never extravagantly. We drove reliable cars rather than luxury ones. We took one nice vacation a year. Our house was beautiful but not ostentatious. I had never wanted for anything material, and Tom had known that about me. No, I admitted. He wasn't wrong. Barbara nodded, then pulled out another folder. There's something else you should know. Tom added a special provision to the trust, what he called the character test. Money character test. For 30 days following his death, if Bradley or Jennifer demonstrate genuine care and support for you without knowledge of the true extent of the estate, a separate trust fund activating on their children's 25th birthdays would be funded with $100,000 each. Barbara met my eyes. If, however, they attempt to control your finances, pressure you about the house, or generally treat you as incompetent, those funds would be redirected to charities of your choosing. I sat back, stunned. Tom set up a test for our children. He was concerned about how they might behave once he was gone. He said, and I quote, "Eleanor is too kind to see the worst in our children. I need to protect her from their worst instincts." Barbara handed me an envelope. He also left this for you to be opened 1 month after his death. Today marks that date. The envelope was heavy, cream-colored stationery with my name and Tom's precise handwriting. I hesitated before opening it. Would you like privacy? Barbara offered. I shook my head. No, please stay. Inside was a 3-page letter in Tom's handwriting. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, I've been gone a month, and you're likely dealing with the aftermath alone. I know our children love them, though I do, and I suspect they're already circling like vultures, convinced they know what's best for you. They don't. You are not a burden to be managed or a problem to be solved. You are the intelligent, capable woman who raised 2 children, supported a husband through career changes, and managed our household with grace and wisdom for over 30 years. Don't let them convince you otherwise. The money and properties are yours to do with as you please. Keep them, sell them, give them away. It's your choice. But make that choice based on what you want, not what others expect from you. I've watched you sacrifice your own dreams for decades, always putting our family first. Now it's time to put yourself first. Go to Spain if you want. Travel the world. Write that novel you always talked about. Whatever brings you joy. The children will survive without your constant sacrifice. In fact, they might even grow stronger for it. About the character test, I know you might find it manipulative. Perhaps it is, but I've watched Bradley and Jen change over the years, becoming more entitled, more focused on appearances than substance. I wanted to give them one last chance to show their true character without the influence of potential inheritance. If they've failed the test, don't blame yourself. We raised them with the right values. They've made their own choices as adults. The key to the Spanish house is in my desk drawer, behind our photo from Venice. Maria Gonzalez next door speaks excellent English and has been taking care of the property. She knows you might be coming someday. Whatever you decide, know that I trust your judgment completely. You've always been the heart of our family, Eleanor. Now it's time to follow your own heart. With all my love and faith in your strength, Tom P. West. I left you a mad money account at First National, $50,000 for whatever frivolous, wonderful things you've denied yourself all these years. The card and pin are with Barbara. Don't you dare spend it on the kids. I folded the letter carefully, tears blurring my vision. Barbara silently passed me a tissue box. He knew, I said finally. He knew exactly what would happen. Barbara nodded. Tom was very perceptive, and he loved you very much. The 30 days are up, I said. What's your assessment of the character test? Barbara's expression was professional but kind. Based on what you've shared today, I don't believe your children have met the conditions, but the final determination is yours. Mrs. Patterson. I thought about Bradley's urgent phone calls, Jen's Instagram performance, The family meeting I hadn't been invited to, and the house sale they'd arranged without my consent. They failed, I said quietly. But I don't want to make that determination yet. They're still my children. The test provision allows for your discretion, Barbara assured me. You can delay the decision if you wish. As I gathered my things to leave, Barbara handed me a small envelope. The bank card and PIN for what Tom called your independence fund. He was quite insistent that you use it for yourself, not for family obligations. The card felt solid in my palm, a tangible symbol of the freedom Tom had tried to give me. I returned home to find another text from Bradley. Mom, Ryan needs an answer by tomorrow. His client is getting impatient. Don't miss this opportunity for all of us. For all of us. Not for me, for them. The house I'd lived in for 30 years, the home where I'd raised my children, was now just an opportunity to be liquidated for their benefit. My phone rang again. It was Megan, Bradley's wife, which was unusual enough to make me answer immediately. Eleanor, it's Megan. She hesitated. I wanted to check if you're doing okay. In the 5 years since she'd married Bradley, Megan had never called me just to check in. Our relationship had been cordial but distant holiday gatherings and occasional family dinners, where she'd speak mainly to Bradley. I'm fine, Megan. Why do you ask? Another pause. I wanted to make sure you weren't feeling pressured about the house. I sat down at the kitchen table, intrigued by this unexpected call. Bradley seems quite determined about the sale. I know. Her voice lowered. Eleanor, there's something you should know. Bradley lost his job 3 weeks ago. The tech company downsized, and his entire department was cut. This was news to me. He didn't say anything. He doesn't want anyone to know. He's been pretending to go to work, but he's actually been job hunting. Megan's voice trembled slightly. We're behind on the mortgage, and his student loans are crushing us. He sees your house as the solution. I thought about my son in his business suit, maintaining appearances while his world crumbled. The desperation I'd sensed suddenly made more sense. Why are you telling me this? Megan. Because, she took a deep breath. Because what they're doing isn't right. I grew up poor. Eleanor, I know what it's like to worry about money, but the way Bradley and Jen are handling this, treating you like you're incapable of making your own decisions, it's wrong. I told Bradley that, but he won't listen. I was touched by her unexpected honesty. Thank you for telling me. I should have called sooner, Megan said, and I should have visited after Tom died. I'm sorry. After the call ended, I sat in the kitchen, watching the sunset through the window Tom had installed himself years ago, insisting on doing the work despite my protest that we could hire someone. Why pay for something I can do with my own hands, he'd said. My phone chimed with an email notification from Ashley. She'd sent several photographs, not selfies or party pictures, but artwork, watercolor landscapes, charcoal portraits, and a particularly striking oil painting of an elderly woman looking out over the ocean. The caption read, "My professor says I have potential. The last one made me think of you, Grandma. Not yet, but someday." Someday, Ashley saw a future for me beyond grief, beyond being the convenient grandmother in Jen's basement. She saw me as a woman with horizons. I went to Tom's study and found the key exactly where he'd said it would be, behind our Venice photo, attached to a small Spanish flag keychain. I opened my laptop and searched for the property management company mentioned in Tom's papers. Maria Gonzalez's email response came within hours. Dear Mrs. Patterson, I was so happy to receive your email, though I am very sorry about Mr. Patterson's passing. He spoke of you often during his visits to prepare the house. Everything here is ready whenever you wish to come. The villa has been maintained just as Tom requested, and the garden is beautiful this time of year. The lemon trees are especially abundant. There is a small community of American and British expatriates in our neighborhood who would welcome you warmly, and I would be honored to help you settle in and learn about our community. Please let me know when you might arrive, and I will ensure everything is perfect for you. With warm regards, Maria Gonzalez attached were several photos of the villa, the sunlit terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, the small but well-appointed kitchen, the master bedroom with windows opening to the sea breeze, and the garden bursting with colorful flowers and citrus trees. It looked like a painting. It looked like peace. I sat back in Tom's chair, the weight of decisions pressing on me. Stay and fight for respect from my children, or leave and find a new beginning. Martha's distinctive knock interrupted my thoughts. "You've been in here for hours," she said, bringing me a cup of tea. "Find anything interesting in Tom's papers?" I showed her everything: the trust documents, Tom's letter, the Spanish villa photos. Martha examined each item carefully, nodding as if her suspicions had been confirmed. "That man," she said finally, with a mixture of exasperation and admiration. "He always did think 10 steps ahead." "Did you know," I asked, "about the money, the patents, the villa?" Martha shook her head. "Not the details, but I knew Tom was planning something. He asked me to keep an eye on you after he was gone to make sure you weren't pressured into anything. He asked you to spy on me. I wasn't sure whether to be touched or offended." "Not spy, so," Martha corrected. "Protect. He worried that you might sacrifice your own happiness for Bradley and Jen, like you always have." Had I always sacrificed for my children? I thought back over the years, the art classes I'd abandoned when Bradley needed braces, the job opportunity I declined when Jen went through her difficult teenage years, the trips Tom and I had postponed to help with college tuition. Small sacrifices that had accumulated into a lifetime of putting others first. "What are you going to do?" Martha asked, sipping her tea. I looked at the Spanish villa photos again, then at the text messages from Bradley and Jen, with their demands disguised as concern. "I'm going to make a phone call," I said, reaching for my phone. "To a moving company." Martha raised her eyebrows. "You're selling the house." "No," I said, feeling a smile spread across my face, the first genuine smile since Tom's death. "I'm shipping some childhood memorabilia back to its rightful owners." The next morning, I called Barbara Goldstein again. "I need your help with something," I told her, "something Tom might call a character test of my own." The moving truck arrived at 7 in the morning, just as Bradley's silver sedan pulled into my driveway. I watched from the bedroom window as my son climbed out, briefcase in hand, expression already set in that mask of professional determination he wore when preparing to close a deal. Today, he thought that deal would be my house. He had no idea what awaited him. "Good morning, Mrs. Patterson," said the lead mover, a kind-faced man named Luis. "Where would you like us to start?" "The attic," I said, handing him a detailed list. "Everything labeled Bradley goes to this address." I pointed to the first address on my handwritten note. "Everything labeled Jennifer goes to the second address. Please be careful with the piano." Luis nodded professionally, but I caught the slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. 20 years in the moving business probably meant he'd seen his share of family drama. Bradley's sharp knock rattled the front door. I took a deep breath, checked my appearance in the mirror. They'd worn the red dress Tom had always loved, my hair freshly styled, and went downstairs to answer. "Mom." Bradley's expression shifted from determination to confusion as he took in my appearance. Then the moving truck. "What's going on? Why is there a moving truck in your driveway?" "Good morning, Bradley," I said calmly. "I'm having some things moved." He pushed past me into the hallway, his eyes widening as two movers carried down a large box labeled Bradley Little League Trophies. "Those are my things," he said. "My childhood things. Why are you packing up my stuff?" "I thought you'd want them," I replied. "Since I'm supposed to be downsizing." His face flushed that familiar red that started at his collar and crept upward, the same look he'd gotten as a teenager when caught in lies. "Mom, we need to talk. Ryan's client is ready to make an offer. We need your signature today." "Bradley, sit down." I gestured to the living room. "I don't want to sit down. I want to know why you're acting so strange. First, you don't return my calls for 3 days. Now there's a moving truck. Sit down." Something in my voice stopped him mid-sentence. He sat on the edge of the sofa, clutching his briefcase like a shield. Where exactly did you tell Ryan's client the proceeds from this house sale would go? I asked, taking a seat across from him. What do you mean? I mean, did you tell them the money would be split between you and Jen? Did you calculate how much you'd each receive after paying off this mysterious mortgage you're so worried about? Bradley's jaw tightened. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Grief can cloud judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear. I interrupted. Clearer than it's been in years. I watched my son carefully. In many ways, he was still the little boy who'd come to me with skinned knees and broken toys, looking for me to fix everything. But he was also a grown man trying to solve his problems by selling his mother's house out from under her. Megan called me, I said gently. The color drained from his face. What did she say? That you lost your job 3 weeks ago, that you're behind on your mortgage, that you see my house as a solution to your problems. Bradley dropped his head into his hands. She had no right to tell you that. She had every right. She's worried about you. And unlike you, she doesn't think lying to me is the solution. The movers carried another box down the stairs, this one containing the baseball glove Tom had bought Bradley for his 10th birthday. Bradley stared at it, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Dad gave me that glove, he said softly. I remember. You slept with it for weeks, even though Tom told you it would ruin the leather. Bradley reached out as the mover passed, touching the worn leather briefly before letting his hand fall back to his lap. Things weren't supposed to be like this. Mom. Like what? I was supposed to be successful by now. Dad was already a department head at my age. He owned this house outright. He never lost a job. Bradley's voice cracked. I can't even keep my family secure. Well, for the first time, I saw beneath my son's mask of confident efficiency to the frightened man beneath, terrified of failing, of not measuring up to his father's example. Bradley, your father's path wasn't as smooth as you think. I leaned forward. Did you know he was laid off when you were 3? We nearly lost this house. He took night shifts at a manufacturing plant while interviewing during the day. Bradley looked up, surprised. He never told me that, because Tom didn't measure success by setbacks. He measured it by how you respond to them. I stood up, walking to the window as another box was carried out. Selling my house isn't the answer to your problems, Bradley. It's just postponing the inevitable reckoning. What am I supposed to do? For a moment, he sounded like the little boy who'd come to me for answers. Start by being honest, with yourself, with Megan, with your children, and with me. I turned back to face him. Tell Ryan there's no house sale. Then go home and make a real plan with Megan. The phone rang before Bradley could respond. Jen's name flashed on the screen. It's your sister, I said, answering and putting it on speaker. Hello, Jennifer? Mom, what is this insanity? Jen's voice was shrill with panic. There's a moving truck at my house and 2 men are trying to deliver a piano and I don't have room for... Hello, Jennifer, I repeated calmly. The piano you begged for when you were 8, I thought you'd want it back. I don't want it back. I have no room for a piano. And Bradley called me about some crazy idea that you're not selling the house. The house isn't being sold. I confirmed. Silence on the other end of the line. Then what do you mean it's not being sold? I mean exactly that. This is my house. Your father left it to me. I'm not selling it. But Bradley said you couldn't afford. Bradley was wrong about many things. Another silence. Longer this time. When Jen spoke again, her voice had that sharp edge I remembered from her teenage years. Mom, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but people are counting on this sale. I've already talked to Ashley about her having a bedroom at my house when you move in. Ashley, I said, looking at Bradley, whose face had gone pale. Tell me about her. Jen, when was the last time she called me? I don't keep track of Ashley's phone calls. The last time she called me was 2 days ago. Before that, It was December 15th. She wanted money for a spring break trip. I walked to the window, watching the movers secure Bradley's childhood rocking chair. She didn't ask how I was doing, didn't mention missing her grandfather, just needed money. Mom, Ashley's a college student. They're self-absorbed at that age. And has she learned from watching her mother that grandmothers exist to provide financial support without expecting emotional connection in return? That's you're twisting everything. Am I? I kept my voice level. Jen, how much money have I sent Ashley over the past 2 years? No answer. $12,000, $500 a month directly to her account. Money you never mentioned to Bradley when you claimed I was financially struggling. Money Ashley apparently believes comes from your sacrifice, not mine. Bradley was staring at me now, his mouth slightly open. You've been sending Ashley money every month since she started college. I confirmed. Because I love my granddaughter and want her to succeed. But love isn't supposed to be invisible. Support isn't supposed to be secret. When did my family decide that my contributions only mattered when they were hidden? Jen's voice came through the speaker, smaller now. Mom, we never meant. Yes, you did. I cut her off. You meant exactly this. You wanted my resources without my presence, my money without my opinions, my compliance without my autonomy. I ended the call and looked at Bradley. The moving truck will be at your house in 30 minutes. I suggest you make room for your childhood memories. Mom, please. Bradley stood up, desperation clear in his eyes. We can fix this. How? The question stopped him cold. I could see him searching for the right words. The magic phrase that would restore his access to my resources without requiring genuine respect or relationship. We could have dinner as a family. Talk about what you really want. What I really want, I said, surprising myself with a laugh. Bradley, what I really want is to live the rest of my life surrounded by people who see me as more than a source of emergency funding. What I want is to wake up in the morning that without wondering which of my children will call with their hand extended. What I want is to be missed for my company, not mourned for my money. The moving truck's engine started outside. Bradley stood up, the sales documents forgotten on the coffee table. Where are you going to go? He asked, a note of panic in his voice. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd directed at my son in months. Somewhere warm. Bradley bent to gather the papers, his movements hurried and desperate. Mom, you can't just disappear. We're your family. Are you? He looked up at me from his crouched position, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to climb into my lap after nightmares, who needed band-aids for scraped knees and stories to chase away the dark. Then he straightened, and the moment passed. When will you be back? He asked, business facade crumbling. I opened the front door, letting in the morning sunlight and the sound of the moving truck pulling away. I'll let you know. After Bradley left, I called Barbara Goldstein again. I need to make arrangements for the house. I told her, not to sell it, but to maintain it while I'm away. How long will you be gone? She asked. I'm not sure yet. The idea of complete freedom was still new, still dizzying. But I'd like the option to return if I choose. Barbara recommended a property management company that could oversee the house, arrange for maintenance, and even rent it out furnished if I decided to stay away longer. By the end of our call, I had a plan in place that would preserve my home while giving me the freedom to leave. Next, I called Dr. Reynolds, my physician, to arrange for an extended supply of my medications and to get recommendations for healthcare in Spain. He was surprised but supportive, providing a detailed medical summary and prescriptions to last several months. Tom mentioned you might be traveling after he was gone. Dr. Reynolds said, I thought he was being optimistic, but I'm glad to see he was right. Tom mentioned this to you, I asked, surprised. He asked about healthcare options in Europe about 6 months ago, said he was planning a surprise. The doctor's voice softened. He loved you very much. Eleanor. Martha arrived as I was packing, carrying a small suitcase of her own. What's this? I asked. I'm coming with you, she announced. just for the first week, to help you settle in, make sure everything's in order. Then I'll come back and keep an eye on things here." I started to protest, but Martha held up a hand. "Tom asked me to do this, Eleanor." His exact words were, "If she actually goes to Spain, make sure she's not alone for the first week. She won't admit it, but she'll be terrified." I closed my mouth knowing she was right. For all my determination, the thought of arriving alone in a foreign country was intimidating. "Thank you," I said simply. Martha nodded. "Besides, I've always wanted to see Spain." As we packed, Martha asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Have you decided about the character test about the trust for the grandchildren?" I folded a light sweater carefully, considering my answer. "Not yet. I want to see what happens when I'm gone, whether they reflect or just get angrier." "They'll probably get angrier first," Martha observed. "People usually do when their plans are disrupted." "I know, but what comes after the anger will tell me everything I need to know." The day before our departure, Ashley called. "Grandma, Dad just came home with boxes of his old stuff. He's in the garage going through his baseball cards and crying." "What's going on?" I explained the situation, not everything, but enough for her to understand that her parents had been planning to sell my house without my consent. "That's horrible," Ashley said, sounding genuinely shocked. "I mean, I heard them talking about the house, but I didn't realize they were being so underhanded about it. People do surprising things when money is involved," I said, thinking of Tom's journal entries. "So what are you going to do?" Ashley asked. "I'm going away for a while. I need some time to think, to figure out what I want the rest of my life to look like." "Away where?" I hesitated, not yet ready to share my plans with anyone who might report back to Bradley or Jen. "Just away. I'll call you when I'm settled." "Promise." Ashley's voice carried a vulnerability that reminded me she was still very young, caught between childhood and adulthood. "I don't want to lose you too, Grandma." "I promise," I said softly. "And Ashley, keep painting. You have real talent." "How did you—" she began, then stopped. "Mom told you, didn't she?" "No, you did. In the painting you sent me. The old woman looking at the ocean. That's not something a business major creates." Ashley's laugh was both surprised and relieved. "I should have known I couldn't hide it from you." After we hung up, I finished my packing with a lighter heart. No matter what happened with Bradley and Jen, Ashley and I had a genuine connection, one based on honesty and shared passion rather than financial dependence. The airport was crowded with summer travelers, but Martha and I moved through check-in and security with the efficiency of women who had places to be. I felt strangely calm, as if I'd been preparing for this journey my entire life. "You look different," Martha observed as we waited at the gate. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you've set down something heavy you've been carrying." I considered this. "I think I have. I've been carrying everyone else's expectations for so long. I forgot what it feels like to have just my own." My phone vibrated with a text from Jen. "Mom, we need to talk. Mark says there must be a misunderstanding. Please call before you do anything rash." I showed it to Martha, who rolled her eyes. "Mark is worried his financial planning has been disrupted." "You never liked him," I observed. "Tom didn't either," Martha replied. "He said Mark treated Jen like an accessory, not a partner." This was news to me. Tom had always been polite to our son-in-law, if not particularly warm. He never said anything. "Tom didn't want to influence your relationship with your son-in-law. He said it was more important that you and Jen stay close." Martha adjusted her reading glasses. "Though I suspect he's rethinking that strategy wherever he is now." I smiled at the thought of Tom watching these events unfold from beyond, perhaps with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. He had always been protective of me, sometimes frustratingly so. This elaborate plan, the villa, the secret accounts, the character test was his final act of protection. But I wasn't just following Tom's plan anymore. I was making my own. I turned off my phone without responding to Jen's message. Whatever misunderstanding Mark wanted to clear up could wait until I was looking at the Mediterranean from my terrace. Flight 247 to Madrid is now boarding, announced the gate attendant. Martha squeezed my hand. Ready. I thought about the house I was leaving behind, the home where I'd raised my children, loved my husband, built my life. I thought about Bradley's desperate face and Jen's angry voice. I thought about Ashley's art and Martha's friendship and Tom's final gift of freedom. Ready, I said, and stepped toward the gate. The flight to Madrid was 13 hours of crystalline clarity. I sat in the window seat Tom had always preferred, watching the Atlantic Ocean spread beneath us like a vast promise. Martha dozed beside me, her book fallen open in her lap. I took out Tom's letter and read it again, finding new meaning in his words now that I'd taken the first step toward the future he'd envisioned for me. I've watched you sacrifice your own dreams for decades, always putting our family first. Now it's time to put yourself first. What were those dreams I'd sacrificed? Some were obvious: the art classes I'd abandoned, the job offer I'd declined, the trips we'd postponed. But others were harder to define: the slow erosion of confidence that comes from always putting others' needs before your own. The gradual acceptance that your purpose is to support rather than to create. The woman beside me, a retiree from Phoenix visiting her daughter in Spain, tried to engage me in conversation during the meal service. First time in Spain, she asked, buttering a dinner roll. Yes, I admitted. My husband bought a place in Marbella, but he passed away before we could go together. Her face softened with sympathy. I'm sorry for your loss, but how wonderful that you're still going. So many people put off living until it's too late. That's what my husband was afraid of, I said, that I'd keep putting it off. She nodded knowingly. My Harold was the same way, always pushing me to take chances. After he died, I almost sold our vacation cabin. Too many memories. But then I thought, what would Harold say? She laughed softly. He'd say, Doris, don't you dare hide from life just because I'm not in it anymore. Sounds like our husbands would have gotten along, I said, smiling. Going alone. No, my friend is coming for the first week. I nodded toward the sleeping Martha. After that, I'll be on my own. You won't be for long, Doris predicted. The expat community in Spain is very welcoming, especially to competent women like you. You don't know I'm competent, I pointed out. Amused. Doris winked. Oh, I can tell. You have that look about you like you've realized you don't need anyone's permission to live your life. After dinner, I reclined my seat and closed my eyes. Not to sleep, but to imagine the life waiting for me in Spain. Not just Tom's vision for me, but my own. A terrace where I could paint again. A kitchen where I could learn to cook Spanish dishes. A community where no one saw me as just someone's mother or grandmother or widow, but as Eleanor, a woman in her own right. The customs officer in Madrid was a young woman with efficient movements who stamped my passport with professional courtesy. Purpose of visit, she asked. I hesitated only briefly. New beginnings? She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd received from anyone under 40 in months. Welcome to Spain, Senora. Maria Gonzalez was waiting for us in the arrivals area, exactly as she'd promised. She was a compact woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun and eyes that crinkled with warmth when she smiled. She held a small sign with Patterson, written in careful script. Mrs. Patterson, welcome, welcome. She embraced me like an old friend, and I found myself returning the hug with an intensity that surprised us both. And this must be your friend, Martha. Martha nodded, shaking Maria's hand. Thank you for meeting us. Of course, Tom made me promise to take good care of Eleanor when she came. Maria's English was excellent, spoken with an accent that made everything sound musical. The car is this way. You must be exhausted from your journey. As we followed her to the parking area, Maria kept up a steady stream of information about the neighborhood, the weather, the best places to shop for groceries. It was exactly what I needed: practical details to ground me in this new reality. Tom, he was so proud of this house, she said as we drove through the winding streets of Marbella. He would show me pictures on his phone, you in the kitchen in America, your grandchildren. My Eleanor will love the kitchen here, he would say. She will make it sing with life. I pressed my lips together, not trusting my voice. Tom had talked about me here in this place I'd never seen, to this woman I'd never met. He'd imagined a future for us that death had stolen, but somehow Maria's words made it feel real again. The villa took my breath away. It was smaller than our American home, but perfectly proportioned, with whitewashed walls and blue shutters that caught the afternoon light. Bougainvillea spilled over the garden walls in explosions of purple and pink, and lemon trees heavy with fruit lined the stone pathway to the front door. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "Tom," Maria said simply, producing the brass key I'd found in his desk. "Come, let me show you inside." The interior was cool and bright, with terracotta floors and windows that opened onto a small terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. The furniture was simple but elegant, a sofa the color of cream, a wooden dining table for four, built-in bookcases waiting to be filled. In the kitchen, copper pots hung from hooks, and the countertops were tiled in blues and whites that reflected the sea beyond. "I stocked the refrigerator with basics," Maria said, opening cabinets to show me plates and glasses. "Olive oil and wine. There is bread, cheese, fruit. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we explore the village together." "Yes," I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the kindness of this stranger who owed me nothing but had cared for my husband's dream as if it were her own. "Maria, I can't thank you enough." "No thanks necessary." She patted my arm gently. "We are neighbors now, in Spain. Neighbors are family." She pointed through the window to a similar house 50 yards away. "I live just there, so if you need anything at all, you call me." Tom made me promise. After Maria left, Martha explored the villa with childlike enthusiasm, exclaiming over the view from each window, testing the firmness of the mattresses, running her hand over the smooth wooden surfaces. "That Tom associate." "Tom," she said, shaking her head in wonder. "He thought of everything." I stood on the terrace, looking out at the Mediterranean stretching endlessly before me, painted in shades of blue deeper than any I'd seen. Sailboats bobbed in the distance like white prayers, and the sound of waves against rocks below created a rhythm that seemed to match my heartbeat. My phone, forgotten in my purse, began to ring. I considered ignoring it, but something made me check the caller ID. Ashley, my granddaughter, calling exactly when she'd promised. I answered on the third ring. "Hello, sweetheart." "Grandma, you answered." Her voice sounded different from when we'd spoken 2 days ago, lighter, more excited. "Are you okay? Where are you? Dad won't tell me anything except that you had some kind of fight and now you're gone and there's all this weird drama about the house." I looked out at the Mediterranean, at the life Tom had prepared for me, at the future stretching out with possibilities I was only beginning to imagine. "I'm better than okay, Ashley," I said. "I'm in Spain." "Spain." Her voice rose in disbelief. "Like the country, Spain, yes." I laughed at her astonishment. "Your grandfather bought a house here for our retirement. I'm standing on the terrace right now, looking at the Mediterranean." A long pause, then quietly, "Is it beautiful?" I watched the sunlight dance across the water, felt the warm breeze carrying the scent of lemons and salt. "It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen." "Grandma, I need to tell you something," Ashley said, her voice carrying across the ocean connection. "I need to apologize." I settled into one of the terrace chairs, watching the first stars appear in the darkening Spanish sky. "You don't need to apologize for anything, sweetheart." "Yes, I do. I should have called more. Should have asked questions. Should have seen what was happening." Ashley's voice broke slightly. "Mom and Dad were awful to you, Tone. Weren't they?" I chose my words carefully. "They're struggling with their own issues, and they thought I was an easy solution." "That's a nice way of saying they tried to sell your house and stick you in Mom's gross basement." Despite everything, I laughed. Ashley had always been refreshingly direct, even as a child. "How did you find out about that part?" I overheard Dad on the phone with Mom after he came home with all his childhood stuff. Ashley's tone darkened. He was furious, saying you'd lost your mind and were punishing them for trying to help you. Then Mom started crying about her Instagram followers asking where the basement renovation posts went. Of course, Jen's primary concern would be her social media presence. And what do you think? I think, Ashley said slowly, that they've been treating you like you don't matter. Like you're just, I don't know, a resource to be managed instead of a person to be loved. From the mouth of babes. That's an insightful observation. It's obvious once you start paying attention. Ashley paused. Grandma, I've been thinking about this a lot since we last talked. They didn't just lie to you about your finances. They lied to me about you. What do you mean? They convinced me you were this fragile old lady who needed to be protected from too much excitement or emotion. They said calling you too often might make you dependent, that I should give you space to grieve. Ashley's voice hardened. But that was never about protecting you, was it? It was about controlling access to you. I watched a small fishing boat making its way back to harbor, lights twinkling in the dusk. They wanted you distant, so you wouldn't witness what they were doing to me. And they wanted me isolated, so I'd be desperate enough to accept their terms. That's so manipulative, Ashley said. But you know what the worst part is? It almost worked. I almost became the kind of person who could ignore her grandmother's loneliness because it was convenient. But you didn't become that person, I reminded her. Only because you forced the truth into the open. If you hadn't left, if you hadn't made them show their real faces, Ashley's voice caught. I might have gone my whole life never knowing who you really are, Grandma. Her words touched something deep inside me, the part that had always feared being invisible, being reduced to just my roles rather than recognized as a complete person. Can I visit you, Ashley asked suddenly. Not right away, but maybe during spring break. I want to see this place Grandpa chose for you. The request caught me by surprise. What about your mother? I don't care what Mom says. Ashley replied with a vehemence that startled me. Actually, that's not true. I care, but I'm not going to let what she says control my choices anymore. We spoke for another hour, making plans for her visit, talking about her art classes, discussing the small Spanish town I was just beginning to explore. When we finally said goodbye, I remained on the terrace, watching the night settle over the Mediterranean and feeling something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. And for the first time in years, the future seemed filled with possibility rather than obligation. Martha joined me, carrying 2 glasses of the local wine Maria had left for us. That was a long call, she observed, handing me a glass. Everything okay? Ashley wants to visit during spring break. Martha raised her eyebrows. And how do you feel about that? I considered the question, happy, but also cautious. I don't want her caught in the middle of whatever is happening with Bradley and Jen. Ashley's 20 years old, Martha reminded me, old enough to make her own decisions about family relationships. We sat in companionable silence, sipping our wine and listening to the gentle rhythm of waves below. Finally, Martha spoke again. Tom would be proud of you. You know, taking this leap. I nodded, throat suddenly tight with emotion. I just wish he were here to see it. Oh, he sees it, Martha said with quiet certainty. Believe me, he sees it. The next week passed in a blur of discovery. Maria proved to be not just a neighbor but a guide, introducing me to the village's rhythms and customs with gentle patience. She showed me the best bakery for fresh bread, the small market where local farmers sold vegetables still warm from the sun, the quiet cafe where expatriates gathered on Tuesday mornings for coffee and conversation. Martha threw herself into the experience with enthusiasm, attempting Spanish phrases with cheerful disregard for pronunciation, sampling every local delicacy, and charming the village shopkeepers with her forthright American manner. You're good for Eleanor, Maria told her one evening as we shared paella on my terrace. She needs someone who understands where she comes from. Eleanor's good for herself, Martha corrected. I'm just along for the ride. On our 5th day, Maria introduced me to Miguel Vega, a retired literature professor who lived 3 houses down. Miguel gives Spanish lessons, she explained, very patient with beginners. Miguel was a tall, dignified man in his 70s with a full head of silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Mrs. Patterson, he greeted me in accented but perfect English. Maria tells me you might be interested in learning our language. I'd like that, I admitted. If I'm going to live here, even part-time, I should be able to communicate. Excellent attitude, Miguel approved. So many Americans expect everyone to speak English. When would you like to begin? We arranged for lessons 3 times a week, starting after Martha's departure. Nothing too formal, Miguel assured me. Conversation, practical vocabulary, things you'll need for daily life. That evening, I received an email from Barbara Goldstein with an update on matters at home. The property management company had conducted their first inspection of the house. Bradley had called the office 3 times, asking about my whereabouts and financial affairs. Barbara had maintained appropriate confidentiality while confirming that all legal matters were in order. The character test period officially ends tomorrow. Barbara wrote, "Please advise on your decision regarding the trust funds for your grandchildren." I thought about Bradley's desperate attempt to sell my house, about Jen's Instagram performance of filial devotion. Then I thought about Ashley's apology, her desire to visit, her genuine remorse. After consideration, I replied, I'd like to establish the trust for Ashley as Tom intended. For Jen's children, I'd like to delay the decision. Perhaps there's still hope for change. Martha left at the end of the week, promising to keep an eye on my house and send regular updates. Don't worry about anything back home, she assured me at the airport. Just focus on building your new life here. And after she departed, I experienced my first real moment of uncertainty. Standing in the villa alone, I felt the full weight of what I'd done, left behind everything familiar. Moved to a country where I barely spoke the language. Distanced myself from family who, despite everything, were still my family. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm me. What if I couldn't do this? What if I was too old to start over? What if this was all a terrible mistake? Then my phone chimed with a text from Ashley. Just submitted my first portfolio for advanced painting class. Professor says I have distinctive perspective. Think he means I actually see things instead of just looking at them. Learning that from you. Grandma. Attached was a photo of her latest work, a watercolor of an older woman sitting on a terrace, looking out at the ocean. Though the woman's back was to the viewer, there was something in the set of her shoulders that conveyed both strength and serenity. I recognized myself in those brushstrokes, seen through my granddaughter's loving eyes, not as a fragile elder to be managed, but as a woman embracing a new chapter. The panic receded, replaced by a quiet determination. I could do this. I would do this. 2 weeks into my Spanish adventure, I established a routine. Mornings began with coffee on the terrace, watching fishing boats return with their overnight catch. Then a walk into the village for fresh bread and practice conversations with patient shopkeepers. Spanish lessons with Miguel, 3 afternoons a week, followed by painting on my terrace as the sun began its descent. I'd set up a small easel there, rediscovering the joy of watercolors after decades of neglect. My initial attempts were hesitant, awkward, but Miguel, who turned out to be an amateur painter himself, offered gentle guidance. Don't try to make it perfect, he advised, watching me struggle with a seascape. Just capture how it feels to look at that horizon. In the evenings, I often dined with Maria and her husband Carlos, or joined the small community of expatriates for meals at local restaurants. They were a diverse group: retired teachers, former diplomats, writers, and artists, all drawn to this coastal town for its beauty and tranquility. Sarah Livingston, a 65-year-old widow from Boston, became a particular friend. Like me, she'd moved to Spain after her husband's death, seeking a fresh start. The first year is the hardest, she told me over sangria one evening. You question yourself constantly, but then one day, you realize you're not just surviving, you're thriving. I thought about that distinction often in the following days. I'd spent the months after Tom's death in survival mode, going through motions, responding to others' expectations. Now I was beginning to make choices based on what brought me joy, what sparked my curiosity, what made me feel alive. One morning, I opened my laptop and began writing not the novel Tom had always encouraged me to attempt, but a memoir about marriage, motherhood, and the slow erosion of self that can happen when love becomes service and service becomes obligation. The words flowed easily, as if they'd been waiting for permission to emerge. I wrote about meeting Tom in college, about the early years of raising Bradley and Jen, about the small compromises that had accumulated over decades. I wrote about the moment I'd found Tom's secret folder, about the moving truck in my driveway, about the feeling of standing on my Spanish terrace for the first time. I wasn't writing for publication or even for anyone else to read. I was writing to understand my own journey, to make sense of how I'd arrived at this unexpected juncture in my life. After 3 weeks in Spain, I received another email from Barbara. Eleanor, I thought you should know that Bradley came to the office yesterday. Unlike his previous visits, he wasn't demanding information about your finances. Instead, he asked if I would forward a letter to you. I've attached it to this email. The decision to read it, of course, is entirely yours. My finger hovered over the attachment. Part of me wanted to delete it unread, to protect the peace I'd found here. But another part, perhaps the part that would always be a mother, needed to know what my son had to say. I clicked on the attachment. Dear Mom, I don't know if you'll read this, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. My behavior has been inexcusable. After you left, I was angry. I told myself you were being selfish, that you didn't understand the pressure I was under. I convinced myself that selling your house was actually for your benefit. Not just mine, but the truth, which has taken me weeks to admit, is that I was trying to solve my problems at your expense. I was willing to uproot you from your home, to diminish your independence, to treat you as a means rather than an end in yourself. Dad would be ashamed of me. I'm ashamed of me. Megan and I have started marriage counseling. We're talking honestly for the first time in years about our finances, our expectations, our future. I've found a new job not as prestigious as my old one, but steady work with people I respect. I don't expect forgiveness, Mom, but I wanted you to know that your departure forced me to face some hard truths about myself and the husband and father I've become. If you're happy in Spain, stay there. You deserve this new beginning. Just know that whenever and if ever you want to come back, even just to visit, I'll be here, not to ask for anything, but simply to see you, with love and regret. Bradley. I read the letter twice, tears blurring my vision on the second reading. It wasn't a perfect apology. Bradley still didn't fully understand the depth of what he'd done, but it was a start, a recognition that something fundamental had been broken and needed repair. I didn't respond immediately. Some wounds needed time, and some relationships needed space to transform into healthier configurations. But I saved the letter, sensing that someday it might serve as the foundation for a new understanding between us. Jen's response came in a different form. A mutual friend from home emailed to tell me that Jen had deleted all her social media accounts abruptly, with a final post stating she was taking time to reassess what really matters. Martha's weekly update confirmed the change. Something's happening with Jen. She's canceled her regular hair appointments, pulled the kids from their expensive summer camps, and there are rumors she and Mark are separating. People are talking, of course, but for once, Jen doesn't seem to care what they're saying. I felt a complicated mix of emotions at this news concern for my daughter. Hope that she might be experiencing genuine reflection. Sadness that it had taken such drastic measures to prompt change. But mostly, I felt a releasing of responsibility. Jen and Bradley were adults making their own choices. I could love them without managing them, care about them without sacrificing myself for them. It was a distinction I was only now learning to make. 3 weeks later, I watched Ashley emerge from the Malaga airport terminal, and I barely recognized my granddaughter. Gone was the polished college student I remembered from Christmas photos, hair perfectly straightened, makeup camera ready, clothes chosen for Instagram approval. This Ashley wore faded jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, her face free of everything except sunglasses and a genuine smile that transformed her entire appearance. Grandma. She dropped her backpack and ran toward me, and I found myself caught up in an embrace that felt nothing like the perfunctory hugs I'd grown accustomed to at family gatherings. This was desperate, grateful, real. "Let me look at you," I said, holding her at arm's length. She was thinner than I remembered, but there was something solid about her presence that hadn't been there before. "You look amazing," she said, studying my face with the same intensity. "Like, actually amazing. Your tan, your hair, did you cut it?" I touched the shorter style Maria had convinced me to try. "Just a trim. It's perfect." Ashley smiled. You look like yourself." During the drive to Marbella, Ashley pressed a rotated to the passenger window like a child, exclaiming over olive groves and whitewashed villages, asking questions about everything we passed. Her enthusiasm was infectious, reminding me of Tom's wonder during our few international trips together. "This is it," I said as we pulled into the driveway of the Spanish house. "Your grandfather's dream?" Ashley stood in the garden for a long moment, taking in the bougainvillea, the lemon trees, the terrace where I'd spent hours reading and writing in the journal I'd started keeping. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes. "He knew, didn't he? He knew you'd need this place." I think he did. That first evening, we sat on the terrace sharing paella that Maria had insisted on preparing for Ashley's arrival. The older woman had fussed over my granddaughter like she was her own, and I watched Ashley respond with the natural warmth that had been missing from her interactions with her parents. "Tell me about your life here," Ashley said, settling into the chair beside mine as the sun began to set. "I want to know everything." So I told her about my morning walks through the village where shopkeepers had learned my name and preferences, about Spanish lessons with Miguel, who had declared I had an ear for languages, about the expatriate community that had welcomed me without question, about the watercolors I'd started painting again, and the memoir I'd begun writing. "You're writing a book." Ashley's eyes widened. "Grandma, that's incredible. I had no idea you wanted to write." I didn't know either until I had the quiet to listen to my own thoughts. Ashley was quiet for a moment, tracing the rim of her water glass with one finger. "Mom called me yesterday." I tensed, but tried not to show it. "She tried to convince me not to come." Ashley continued. "Said you were having some kind of breakdown and that seeing me might make it worse." She looked up, eyes flashing with anger. "She said I was being selfish coming here instead of spending spring break with the family." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that maybe it was time for someone in our family to be selfish on your behalf." Ashley's voice carried an edge of steel I'd never heard before. "And then I asked her point blank, if you're having a breakdown, why haven't any of them come to check on you? Why haven't they called you directly instead of talking about you like you're a problem to be managed?" What did she say? Nothing. She couldn't answer because the answer would have revealed the truth that they don't actually care about your well-being. They care about their access to your resources. The bluntness of it should have hurt, but instead it felt like vindication. "Ashley, I need you to understand something," I said carefully. "I don't expect you to choose sides in this. Bradley and Jen are your family too." "No." Ashley's voice was firm. "They chose sides when they decided to use me as a weapon against you. When they let me believe you were poor and fragile while you were paying my bills. When they tried to isolate you from people who might actually support you." She leaned forward in her chair. "Grandma, I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I realized something. They didn't just lie to you about your finances. They lied to me about you." "What do you mean?" "They convinced me you were this fragile old lady who needed to be protected from too much excitement or emotion. They said calling you too often might make you dependent, that I should give you space to grieve." Ashley's hands clenched into fists. "But that was never about protecting you, was it? It was about controlling the narrative." I stared at my granddaughter, amazed by her clarity. They wanted me isolated so I'd be desperate enough to accept their terms, I said slowly. And they wanted you distant so you wouldn't witness what they were doing to me. Ashley's hands clenched into fists. Do you know what the worst part is? It almost worked. I almost became the kind of person who could ignore her grandmother's loneliness because it was convenient. But you didn't become that person. Only because you forced the truth into the open. If you hadn't left, if you hadn't made them show their real faces. Ashley shook her head. I might have gone my whole life never knowing who you really are. We sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged overhead. Finally, Ashley spoke again. Can I stay longer than a week? The question surprised me. What about school? I talked to my professors before I left. I can do independent study for the rest of the semester, write papers, take exams online. Ashley looked at me earnestly. I don't want to go back yet. I want to spend real time with you. Time that isn't measured in holiday visits or phone calls with agendas. Ashley, your education will still be there when I'm ready for it. But this chance, this time with you, I might not get it again. She looked at me with Tom's eyes, steady and determined. Grandma, I'm 20 years old, and I just realized I've never had a real conversation with you. All my life. You've been the person who remembers birthdays and sends care packages and shows up to family events with homemade desserts. But I don't know what makes you laugh or what you dream about or what you were like before you became our grandmother. And you want to know those things? I want to know everything. The next morning, Ashley joined me for my daily walk through the village. She charmed the baker with her attempts at Spanish, helped Maria tend the garden, and listened with rapt attention as Miguel told stories about his years teaching literature at the University of Madrid. Your grandmother, she has the soul of a writer, he told Ashley at the cafe where I'd become a regular. She sees details others miss, understands the weight of small moments. She's always been like that, Ashley said, looking at me with new appreciation. I just never paid attention before. That afternoon, we drove to a small beach I'd discovered, a hidden cove accessible only by a winding path through pine trees. Ashley spread a blanket on the sand while I unpacked the picnic lunch we'd assembled together. Grandma, can I ask you something personal? I looked up from the sandwiches. Of course. Are you ever going back? The question I'd been avoiding, even in my own thoughts. I don't know. But you could stay here permanently. Legally, Tom researched it thoroughly. I have residency options, health care, everything I'd need. I handed her a sandwich and settled beside her on the blanket. Why do you ask? Because I think you should stay. The certainty in her voice surprised me. Ashley, no, listen, I think you should stay. And I think you should let Mom and Dad figure out their own lives without expecting you to fund their mistakes or validate their choices. Ashley took a bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. And I think I should transfer to a university here. What? There are American programs in Madrid, Barcelona, even here in Malaga. I could finish my degree in international studies, become fluent in Spanish, maybe learn about a different way of living. She looked out at the Mediterranean, her expression thoughtful. Or maybe I could take a gap year, work with Maria at her pottery studio. Did you know she's an amazing ceramicist? Help you with your book. Figure out who I am when I'm not performing for an audience. Ashley, that's a huge decision. So was getting on a plane to Spain. So was cutting your hair and writing a book and refusing to sell your house. Ashley turned to face me fully. Grandma, for my entire life, I've been making decisions based on what other people expected from me. What Mom wanted, what my professors wanted, what my sorority sisters thought was appropriate. But sitting here with you, I feel like I'm seeing clearly for the first time. What do you see? I see that you're not the fragile old lady they painted you as. You're probably the strongest person I know. Ashley's voice grew stronger. And I see that I don't want to be the kind of person who abandons someone I love because it's convenient. I want to be the kind of person who shows up, who chooses love over comfort, truth over convenience. Ashley, Your mother will never forgive me if I let you derail your life. This isn't derailing my life. This is saving it. Ashley grabbed my hands, her grip warm and sure. Grandma, I was sleepwalking through college, going through the motions because it was expected, but I'm awake now, and I want to spend my awakeness with someone who sees me as more than a project to be managed. That evening, we called the university together and arranged for Ashley's temporary leave of absence. Then we called Maria to ask about the pottery studio apprenticeship she'd mentioned as a possibility. Finally, with the Spanish sun setting behind us and the sound of waves providing a soundtrack to our conversation, Ashley made one last call to her mother. Mom, it's Ashley. I'm extending my stay in Spain. She paused, listening. No, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. Another pause. I understand you're angry, but I'm 20 years old and I get to decide how I spend my time. I watched my granddaughter's face harden as she listened to whatever Jen was saying. Actually, Mom, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm choosing Grandma because she's the only person in our family who's ever treated me like I matter more than what I can provide. Ashley ended the call and turned off her phone. Any regrets? I asked. She smiled Tom's smile, full of quiet determination. Just one, that it took me 20 years to figure out where I belonged. Summer faded into autumn, bringing cooler breezes but still plenty of sunshine to our terrace. Ashley had flourished in her gap year, dividing her time between Maria's pottery studio, where she showed remarkable talent, and assisting Miguel with English translations of Spanish poetry. Her Spanish had improved rapidly, and she'd made friends with several young locals who worked in the arts. I continued writing my memoir, now with Ashley's encouragement. It's not just your story, she insisted. It's a story about how women of your generation were expected to make themselves smaller for everyone else. People need to hear it. In October, I received an unexpected email. Dear Mom, I hope this finds you well. Martha tells me you and Ashley are thriving in Spain, which doesn't surprise me. Ashley always had your spirit, the part of you that got buried under years of being everyone's support system. I'm writing to let you know that Mark and I are divorcing. It's been a long time coming, though I was too focused on maintaining appearances to admit it. The perfect life I curated on social media was a facade covering a deeply unhappy marriage. After you left, I was furious. I blamed you for disrupting my carefully constructed narrative. But as the weeks passed, I began to see how much energy I'd been putting into creating an illusion instead of living authentically. Watching Ashley choose a different path, one based on genuine passion, rather than external expectations, made me question everything I thought I wanted. So did your courage in starting over at 63. I've taken a job teaching art at the local elementary school. Remember how I used to paint before Mark convinced me it was impractical? The pay is terrible compared to Mark's income. But for the first time in years, I look forward to getting up in the morning. I don't expect this email to fix what's broken between us. I just wanted you to know that your leaving wasn't just a wake-up call for Ashley. It was for me too. With love, Jen PB. Yeah, I found the trust document in Dad's papers after you left. I know about the character test, and I know we failed it. Dad was right to set that condition, and you were right to honor it. I read the email to Ashley as we sat on our terrace that evening, watching the sunset paint the Mediterranean in shades of gold and coral. Are you going to write back? She asked when I finished. I think so. Not right away, but soon. I folded my reading glasses, considering what this might mean for our family's future. Your mother sounds different. She does, Ashley agreed. More bitom. Do you think people can really change? I asked. Or do they just show different faces depending on circumstances? Ashley considered this, her artist's eye watching the shifting colors of the sunset. I think change is possible, but it requires a catalyst, something that forces you to see yourself clearly, even when that vision is uncomfortable. Like your mother losing her perfect social media life, or Bradley facing his financial failures, or me realizing I was becoming someone I didn't respect, Ashley added quietly, or you deciding you deserve more than being everyone's safety net. We were quiet for a moment, each lost in our own thoughts. Then Ashley spoke again, her voice soft in the gathering dusk. I got an email from Dad today, too. He's coming to visit next month, just for a weekend. I told him he could stay on the pull-out sofa in the guest room. She glanced at me. Is that okay? I thought about Bradley's letter, about the changes he claimed to be making, about the son who had tried to sell my house and the little boy who'd slept with his baseball glove. Yes, I said finally. That's okay. He wants to see you too, but he said the decision is entirely yours. No pressure. I nodded, grateful for this small acknowledgement of my autonomy. I'll think about it. Later that night, after Ashley had gone to bed, I returned to the terrace alone. The Mediterranean stretched dark and endless before me, reflecting the stars overhead. In the distance, the lights of fishing boats bobbed gently on the horizon. I thought about the journey that had brought me here from grieving widow to independent woman, from someone defined by others' needs to someone charting her own course. Tom had given me the key to this new life, but I had been the one to walk through the door. I had been the one to say no to my children's demands, to board the plane, to embrace this unfamiliar existence. And now, perhaps, I was ready for the next step, not forgetting the past or erasing old hurts, but building something new from their ashes. A family based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Relationships chosen freely rather than maintained out of duty. My phone chimed with a text from Maria. Lunch tomorrow, Carlos is making his famous seafood stew. Miguel and Sarah coming too. I smiled, typing back, wouldn't miss it. Ashley and I will bring dessert. As I prepared for bed, I paused at the framed photo of Tom and me in Venice that now sat on my Spanish dresser. I touched his face gently through the glass. You were right, I whispered. It was time to put myself first, but I think you'd be pleased to know it might have helped our children find themselves too. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves and Ashley's voice in the kitchen, already up and preparing coffee. I heard her humming softly, a habit she'd inherited from Tom, as she moved around the space that had become as much hers as mine. I joined her, accepting the mug she offered with a smile. Sleep well, she asked. Very. I took a sip of the strong Spanish coffee she'd learned to make perfectly. I made a decision last night. About Dad's visit. About everything. I stepped out onto the terrace, Ashley following. The morning sun was just beginning to touch the water, turning it to liquid gold. I'm staying in Spain, not just for now, but permanently. This is my home now. Ashley's face broke into a wide smile. I was hoping you'd say that. And will you go back to university in the spring? She shook her head. Not in America. I've applied to programs here, art and design. Maria thinks I have real talent with ceramics, and Miguel's helping with the applications. I nodded, unsurprised. I'd watched my granddaughter transform over these months, her artwork deepening, her confidence growing, her spirit flourishing in this place where no one had preconceived notions about who she should be. And Jen and Bradley, she asked, will you let them visit too? I thought about my children, their mistakes and manipulations, but also their recent attempts at honesty. The fragile beginnings of what might become authentic relationships if carefully tended. Yes, I said finally, on new terms, as adults visiting another adult, not children expecting their mother to cater to their needs. Ashley nodded, understanding perfectly. A reset. Exactly. We stood together in comfortable silence, watching the day brighten over the Mediterranean. After a while, Ashley slipped her arm through mine. Grandma, she said softly, thank you for showing me it's never too late to choose yourself. I squeezed her hand, thinking of all the women who never get that chance, who live their entire lives defined by others' expectations, who never discover their own strength until it's too late to use it. It's the greatest gift your grandfather could have given me, I said. Not the house or the money, but the push to find out who Eleanor Patterson really is when she's not busy being everyone else's version of her. Well, and who is she? Ashley asked, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I looked out at the vast Mediterranean, at the village waking up below us, at the life I'd built here brick by brick, at the art supplies on the terrace table, and the half-finished memoir on my laptop. at my granddaughter beside me, her future unfolding with all its beautiful possibility. She's a woman who finally understands that sunset isn't an ending. I said, sometimes it's the most beautiful beginning. As we sat together on my Spanish terrace, watching the morning unfold over the Mediterranean, I realized that my story of loss had become a story of finding. I'd lost the illusion of family that demanded my diminishment, but I'd found the reality of family that celebrated my strength. And for the first time since Tom's death, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. What would you do if you were in my position? Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own happiness? Comment below and let me know. And be sure to check out two other reader favorites, The Secret My Mother-in-Law Kept for 40 Years, and When I Discovered Who My Husband Really Was.